Look at me. Yeah, I said that yesterday and I'm saying it again today. Take this seriously or don't. I've talked to too many people lately that are living in their heads, living in this imaginary, disconnected world, and they're encouraged by others to do that and to make commitments to conform to things that, as I see, they're not ready to conform to. How many people do you know that actually, go to school with are they going for the intention of making a living doing what they're studying? How many people actually end up doing something with that education? Or is education today just a buffer to bide time for people to be conformed into a social group, into society, and to conform, accept something less than they might have been otherwise? Who am I to say? Just a thought. I spoke about transformation, and I feel like I left something on the table. There's a mechanical transformation that you may see in a movie. I think I've spoken about Transformers, for example. But the interesting thing about Transformers is that they can always return back to their original state before they transformed or morphed into something else. We can make the mistake of, in our mental programs, of thinking that we can go back. If you encounter a trauma, say you lose an arm or you lose something that you just can't get back, maybe some functionality, or maybe you really do have a breakthrough, a near-death experience that totally shifts your perspective on life versus that was formed in your early childhood and maybe the comfort of society or whatever environment that you've been in, where you're totally shaken. And I encounter a number of people like that in my life as people that are, aspiring to improve themselves, other people who have encountered unexpected difficulties. So this idea of transformation, in its most strict sense, in my mind, requires no bridge back. There's no plan B, as I've heard some people, speak of. So in that regard, it's really scary to talk about transformation because there is a destruction that has to take place. And there's a period as we accept what's been lost that we're in this void, and that's the place where a new season can begin. And I'm drawn by some feedback that I've had recently from someone who was watching some of this series that I've been producing myself lately, who's been struggling with addiction for a long time. There's some repeated patterns. And I'm just going to throw this out here that, some people, who feel really deeply find that they turn to, drugs and alcohol, sometimes as a long-term escape plan to avoid feeling, to avoid basically living their life, because it's easier for them to walk this road where they have total control. And there's basically behind that, you could say that there's a lack of some trust, not only with themselves, but in society. And I find that our Western society is not so quick to take responsibility for the failures of the community as it relates to the individual. So as individuals try to transform themselves and to adhere to more of the conforming standards of society, they're challenged as individuals to deal with this all on their own. And they could use some help. They could use some understanding. And that's usually where I find that transformation meets a resistance from others, because others have been burned. They've been burned by people that are in need and struggling with alcohol and addiction and maybe homelessness. Even the term homeless implies that the norm would imply that someone owned or had a home, and that they had, a living room, a dining room, a kitchen, and a bedroom, and a closet, and they had a set of clothes that they had access to for, one season, and then another set of clothes for another season, and that they, have insurance, and there's a whole, conformed lifestyle that is implied, behind that. And so I'm kind of moved to talk about, transformation, but it reaches down into so many different tenets of the structure of our society. And I know it may sound like I'm rambling, but I've been through this stuff in my own quest and encountered these people, and I don't think that they've really been heard. And on the other hand, I think there's a lot of people, trying to understand. And it's fascinating to me that this is 2023, and we've been talking and observing and making laws and starting nonprofits, and people have been trying to solve these problems that have been identified in society for decades. And I'm not so sure that we've made a lot of progress that we could run down the street and cheer about. And in fact, I think the real test is when there's people that could look you in the eye and say, I'm ready to bring another child into this world, and have full confidence that they could offer them the safety and security that we all would like to offer, then I think, we've achieved that as mankind. And obviously, we can't do that. We've failed. So has the individual failed, or has the collective failed, or is there another component in this formula? Well, we're going to figure that out. We do know that there are environmental factors from childhood that drive addiction, that drive many behaviors, subconscious behaviors that keep us from staying connected with ourselves, with who we are. And I think that's part of our secret of remembering who we are, going within to find that fundamental direction that's not going to be met with achievement, thumbs up on social media. It's not going to be met in that way, because I think that is a path toward a false, fundamentally unsound way of living. It may get us by for a few days, a few years, but ultimately we're learning as we've had the transparency into our institutions, our celebrities, our heroes, our leaders, that they're not as perfect as we wanted to believe. We are not as perfect as we would like to believe. And I'm not promoting acting out on that, but I am promoting being authentic and accepting some of those factors in ourselves and in each other, because I think that's where we really find peace. And as you do this, you can learn to discern reality from the simulations or fictions or the stories that you would love to be able to tell. But the bottom line, I think the real litmus test is being able to say, here's how you can live. All the best.